This video presentation of the 2015 Senior Housing Summit is brought to you by Barnes & Thornburg, LLP. With more than 600 attorneys and other legal professionals in 13 offices around the United States, Barnes & Thornburg is one of the largest law firms in the country. Serving businesses, local governments, developers, and lenders, our attorneys help bring projects to life, advising on public finance, infrastructure financing, public-private partnerships, and general municipal law.
Well, good morning. Thank you, everyone, for coming out this morning for our Senior Housing Summit. I've met a lot of people that are here for the first time, and we're very excited to meet everybody and hope that you will come back many more times. So my name is Connie Allen with Real Estate People. And for any of you who don't already know, Real Estate People is a media and events company that is basically a platform for the commercial real estate industry. We strictly deal with commercial real estate. And we have an email newsletter, Real Estate People, where we talk about the people in the industry. The IBJ does a really good job of informing you guys every week about the transactions that have taken place. You know, this tract of land got sold, or this building got sold, or this lease deal got done. They'll talk about new developments that are in the pipeline. So we don't do that, but our perspective is that none of this happens without the people in the industry that are making it happen. So that's what we want to feature, is who are the people that are making all of these things happen. So our reporter, Amber Peckham, sometimes might be giving you a phone call and saying that she wants to come talk to you about something. And so if she calls you, take her calls, return her calls, whatever. Then once a month we do an event that has to do with a different topic of interest to the commercial real estate industry. And April happens to be our one-year anniversary here in Indianapolis. So we're really excited about everybody supporting us enough that we made it to this milestone. And we hope that we're here for many more years. Real Estate People is a sponsor-supported organization. I could not do what I do every single month without the help of our sponsors. And if anybody in the room wants to sponsor, please contact Judy Newman. She's our business development person, or if Judy gives you a call, also take her calls or return her calls. We'd appreciate that. But today I want to say thank you to our sponsors, AHEPA, the National Housing Corporation, American Structure Point, Bingham Green Baum-Dahl, Browning Day Mullins Deerdorf, ICBR, the Indiana Commercial Board of Realtors, and Regis, who is the official furnished office suites of the Real Estate People event series. And then Barnes & Thornburg is obviously our host venue, but our video, or our host sponsor and our video sponsor today as well. So let's give Barnes & Thornburg a big hand for letting us be here again today. We appreciate it so much. So we're going to get started. I'm going to let our speakers introduce themselves. We've all been to events where the MC tries to read off of cards and say something clever and introduce other people, and I save myself that angst and just let them introduce themselves. So Rob, we're going to let you start.
Good morning, everybody. Rob Bray. I'm with American Structure Point. I am a senior project manager there and in charge of our commercial market sector. I'm a registered architect in 5 states, and I've been in the industry for about 15 years now, doing design and architectural work.
Good morning. I'm Orion Bell. I'm the CEO for Sequoia Aging and In-Home Solutions. We're the area agency on aging that serves central Indiana. And our interest in senior housing is about 90% of the senior population says they'd like to stay in their home and community as they grow older, but about half of that number's worry that they won't be able to. And so senior housing becomes a significant issue for older adults.
Good morning. I'm Suzanne Thompson, and I'm with the Justice Companies, the Crestwood Village portfolio. Many of you recognize. You've probably heard Bob Gregory tell you it's easier and more affordable than you think. I knew we had done something right with Bob when he told me that more people ask him about Crestwood Village than the weather. We did something right there. I've been with the Justice Companies for 10 years, and I'm vice president. Most people, as I said, know us for the Crestwood Village portfolio, but we've been in business for 100 years. We started as a single-family home builder. We've been fortunate to be diversified through the years, so if the single-family side was doing particularly well, we scaled back on the multifamily and senior side. When the single-family scaled back, we scaled forward with the multifamily side.
Good morning. My name is Matt Price. I'm a partner at Bingham Greenebaum Dahl, chair of the firm's economic development practice group, and focus primarily on obtaining entitlements for new projects, including senior housing communities, and also do incentive procurement relating to senior communities and other economic development type projects. And have been doing that for a little over 20 years, and our firm recently celebrated its 100-year anniversary as well.
Good morning, I'm Jeff Spahn. Is this on? Can everybody hear me? I'm a vice president with PR Mortgage and Investments. We are a multifamily firm and a senior housing lender. PR Mortgage is a mortgage brokerage firm, and
Jeff, you guys are involved in a lot of senior housing, correct?
yes, absolutely.
Okay. Good morning. I'm Greg Jacoby. I'll be the moderator this morning. I'm a partner at Browning Day Mullins Deardorff, an architectural and landscape architectural firm here in town. We've been involved in housing and senior housing for probably the last 20 years. We've done multiple different types of housing, both for seniors, assisted living, skilled care. So I know a little bit about a lot and a lot about a little. So that's put me up on the moderator's position. We're going to get started this morning. I think senior housing it's a very personal thing. How many people here have thought about either their future or have a relative that's either in the process of thinking about aging in place or might have to go into some kind of a housing situation that makes it safer for them? Everybody raise their hand that has that. Yeah, so this is a topic that's kind of hits home really, really quickly. I mean, this morning I'm reading an email about a lawnmower and my 87-year-old father and how he thinks you should use that lawnmower. And I broke it last year. I just pulled the spark plug out of it when I left. And he's trying to fix it, and he's having somebody come, and I go, no, that's not the concept. The concept is that I broke it. I want it to stay broken, and we've hired somebody to come and mow the yard. But it's not registering, so I'm going to have to, I'm not sure what my next process is. But we all have those stories, right? And we all deal with that.
I'll help you with that.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Aging in place is what we're dealing with there. So I want to talk about the marketplace. I want to just try to place us all where this marketplace is, and we'll just kind of jump in. And everybody, in your perspective, how do you see the marketplace, and then what's your typical client that you're dealing with in your area of senior housing? Anybody want to go first?
Sure, I can start. So the market is such a broad spectrum from the design side, because just like most other industries, we're seeing it becoming very specialized in that with baby boomers and with the focus on aging in place and all the other issues with healthcare, that it's such a prevalent piece that there's so many different factors that go into that market that you can't broad brush saying senior housing is this or senior housing is that. Me personally, a lot of the work that we've done, we've gotten into recently working with developers and communities to fill the void in the market, whether it be in assisted living, independent living, skilled nursing facilities, and how those really dovetail into growing these communities or filling even economic development needs that a lot of these communities have because of the need and the marketplace dealing with senior housing.
I guess as the Area Agency on Aging, we work with a lot of older adults. So there's no typical senior any more than there's a typical 37-year-old. So it is all about individual choices. There are a wide variety of program options available. I think people have a very limited view of what that is. They think of a skilled nursing facility or an old folks home, and that's not where most people end up. There's a wide array of services, including the ability to stay in one's own home. But say our typical person who uses our services to help them stay in a community setting is a 78-year-old female who is widowed or otherwise lives alone. And just the challenges someone has because of mobility issues or transportation issues or other things that make them consider whether or not they can stay in the home that they currently are in. And we always add affordable to the housing conversation, because for many people it is the cost of the housing option that it will ultimately derive how they make a decision or what they decide to do.
Well, at Crestwood Village, in that portfolio, we find that we really have two separate customers. It makes it challenging in terms of marketing and design, because we're working not only with the prospective and current resident who will actually live there, we're also working very closely with the influencer that will help that person make the decision. Typically, that person is going to be the eldest daughter, and she is going to be the person that is helping mom, we're 70% female, make the decision. One of the things that we find so frequently, and I know others have as well, is that people say, oh, I don't need this, it's for someone else, or I won't need this for a long time. So we have found the entrance age has increased tremendously, and the acuity has changed significantly. What we love to hear so frequently, though, is how many of our residents say, I wish I would have done this sooner. How many of our influencers, the families, say, oh, I just wish we would have done this earlier for mom. She loves all her new friends. She loves the activities. She loves all of the things that are involved with it. And the perception that most people have erroneously is that it's a lack of independence or a lack of choices that are available. And as an industry, and certainly as a company, we're working very hard to change that perception away from being a place you put your mother, but a place where you choose to be, whether you are the mother or you are the father or the person who's helping to make that decision.
I think from my perspective, we're representing clients typically that are trying to obtain an approval in order to build a particular type of project, or maybe even just a single building. And because the term senior community encompasses so many different options, that can mean a lot of different things, from something fairly small like seeking a variance so that a property can have more than one dwelling on a single property. The idea of the property owner being to have adjacent housing for an older member of the family, to something much more substantial like an age-restricted community, a golf course community, to going along the continuum of care to more of an assisted living or even skilled nursing type community. And so I think one of the things in talking with the public, which is largely what I do in representing clients, talking to the public and boards and agencies about what you're proposing, is just explaining kind of where on that continuum a particular project falls. And I think communities, particularly here in central Indiana, which is where most of my experience is, I think communities are becoming very well educated and understanding about what those various housing options are, because their citizenry really is demanding those options. And from an economic development standpoint, it becomes a very critical element in having a well-rounded community that offers a variety of housing options for its citizens and for folks that that community would like to recruit to their location.
I want to apologize for my previous stuttering during introductions, but as a lender, we work with borrowers, as developers, owners of senior housing, and we do assisted living, independent living, skilled nursing, pretty much across the whole gamut. We also specialize in affordable housing. So from time to time we'll see tax credit projects, affordable senior care, but basically our audience is developers and owners.
Senior living is not without 1,000 definitions for the, multiple times the same word. So I think I'm going to do a little bit of, that's just not a test for the panel, but I'm going to try to, does everyone follow all of the pieces, or I think we should do a little bit about what we have. So let's start with what we all perceive senior living to be, which is we took grandma to the nursing home, and we went and visited grandma at the nursing home, and then she died. That is this much of senior living. So let's talk about the different pieces and parts of that. So let's start with assisted living. Does everyone understand what assisted living is and how that's defined? Because I think as real estate people, it's important that we have those definitions in place. So I don't see anybody shaking their head like they got it all figured out. So who wants to jump on defining assisted living for us? This is a test.
Well, just kind of sort of briefly on a continuum, you have everything from the person who is, living independently in the community, in the apartment or the home where they are. They don't identify it as senior anything. That's just where they happen to be. You have senior care communities or senior communities that target either by an age restriction or something. And there might be some amenities, but they're not related to personal assistance or personal care. Assisted living, and there can be unlicensed or as well as licensed or more regulated versions of this, offer some features that assist with personal assistance, those activities of daily living. Somebody that may have assistance need with meal preparation or housekeeping or bathing and dressing, and those kind of things. Not medical service. And so that's an assisted living facility. In Indiana, assisted living is a landlord-tenant relationship. If you're the senior, you have the key to the apartment. Your name is on the lease. You decide when you come and go. It is not a skilled care kind of a setting. Whereas you might have a memory care unit or other kind of things that target more specialized needs. But assisted living is still traditionally in the form of a landlord-tenant kind of relationship, just with some additional amenities that allows the person a greater degree of independence in their home.
I think there's another level that is the CCRC, the Continuing Care Retirement Community, and that would be a combination of 3 different levels of service. Independent living, meaning age-restricted, someone who is 55 or 62 and older, living within the community independently. An assisted living component where it again is someone who requires the assistance with their activities of daily living. And then a third component which could be comprised of either a skilled nursing care or perhaps memory care. So a CCRC is 3 or more of those levels of care. And we're seeing quite a number of those in the Indianapolis and surrounding counties.
And I would add, many facilities now are doing transitional care. So that is where anyone, but many times it's an elderly person, has a fall, spends some time in the hospital, needs some assistance as they recover and some therapy, and it's a combination of housing and recovery in the same facility. They may be there for 2 or 3 months, and then they go back home. And it's introduction for a lot of people on their first step into what future housing could be like for them as they decide not to age in place where they are. So I think those are all the terms.
If I could jump on just the transitional care, I think that's, at least in our experience, is something that's become a more popular aspect of that, because ultimately, we understand the goal is to get them home or back to their community. So to have that kind of first step where you can bring intergenerational, because a lot of these transitional care facilities aren't really geared for seniors. We want to bring the community in. It shouldn't have the stigma or the nomenclature of being a nursing home. So when we set out to do these designs, we really wanted to look at how we could really start to bring in other aspects of communities or urban areas where you have aspects of hospitality or retail or commercial, where you start to make it more of a community setting, and there's these amenities, or it doesn't have the stigma of having true nursing care. And ultimately the goal is to be able to get people home, or to options, but as part of the industry, obviously there are people that are there for more long-term care, but it starts to bring in kind of a mix of seniors rather than just kind of that small definition of someone that needs that long-term care.
So I would add to that too, as you're kind of looking at the continuum. The other thing to realize with some of this is that you can have the amenities and the features around this and not have these things be a place to warehouse the old people. And if you look at community planning, walkability, a village kind of a concept, some of the things that have been tried to be developed in some of the downtown neighborhoods in Indianapolis, or if you listen to Mayor Brainerd talk about sort of the plan for the downtown district in Carmel, those are not age specific, but those features and amenities that draw the young professional because they like the loft apartment and the walkability and the compactness of the neighborhood are also the things that are attractive to the older adult, and that you can pursue that without it being age restricted in some way.
Yeah, I agree with that. We're doing a lot of multi-family, multi-use projects in the downtown, and about 20% of the people that are starting to move into those facilities are not all millennials. They're about 20% are 65 and above. And what's interesting is the amenities that we put into our senior living facilities and the amenities that we put into our millennial kind of directed facilities are almost identical. Some have a few more pool courts than others, but generally it's about the same thing. So which is great, because none of us are going to age. We're all going to be Mick Jagger.
We were talking.
Drugs might be helping that a little bit, but so let's kind of hit on the trends. Then I think we kind of got the definition. So what are the trends? What are we seeing now, and if you can project out, let's go out 10 years. What do you see the trends are going to change? How we think about where we locate, and even how you might finance these facilities, because those things, there's still a lot of baby boomers that are retiring, and making decisions on what they're going to do or stay at home. So there's a lot of trends at home too. So so as we get older, what are the trends that are going to help us to help our family members, or help us as we make decisions ourselves?
One of the things we were discussing earlier today was the idea that the baby boomers are really driving this change in our industry. And the thing that's most important to know about baby boomers is they want what they want, when they want it, how they want it, and there are enough of them that they're going to get it. So when we're designing our communities for the future, one of the things that came up again and again was music. Right? Everyone loves music, and they're not all interested in sitting in a room where a entertainer comes in and entertains, and they all sit there and watch and clap at the end and go back to their apartment or their room in some cases. We looked at it and we said they want new experiences in their life. They've pushed off or not had the opportunity to do things that they've always wanted to. So in our Woodland Terrace of Carmel community we're building now, we have a music studio. And it's not just a room where they can listen to music. It's a full-blown music studio with a private practice booth. So if they want to go in and play the guitar, or they want to play the drums, they're in there and they're the new Mick Jagger or whomever. at least for that moment. We're implementing a lot of technology into the community because this is what they live with day in and day out. I think my mom has everything ever made by anything. iPad, iPhone, you name it, she has it. And that's the demographic that we're building towards.
On the marketplace side, as far as the product, do you see any changes in the type of products that's going to come out in 10 years?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think technology, you touched on it, I think technology is going to drive a lot of what's going to be coming down the road in 10, 15 years, and I think it's even hard for us to predict right now what that paradigm shift really is going to be with the technology aspect of these facilities. We see it more adaptive reuse. There's a lot of aging facilities within communities that have seen this become really that sweet spot where they can start to revitalize these areas and start to turn them around. And what better than to have a mixed use development that has a senior component to that for housing that gives these seniors an opportunity to stay relatively tied to their communities and not having to go to the outskirts of town for care. With these communities, we see a lot of the cottage aspects or things where it becomes more of a resort setting, which I think gets to a lot of the developments that have been done and will continue to be done in that continuing care spectrum in those facilities, and just really looking at how we can keep it flexible enough to where they are tied to their community still, but still have a lot of access and accessibility to their network of people, especially in building those neighborhoods.
From a financing perspective, I think that the market's really competitive today. You've got banks, you've got the secondary mortgage market with FHA. Freddie and Fannie are extremely competitive with some of their senior products. I think I had said banks, but I expect it to remain competitive. And interest rates are low enough that they're helping drive construction, they're helping drive sales because they're making things affordable enough. With the housing market improving, folks are able to get out of their homes and into what they want to get into, which is lower maintenance. And these continuum of care facilities are a major trend that we're seeing. So someone starting sometimes at age 55, others restricted at 62, can move through that continuum of care and not be in, quote unquote facility. During those years, it's a community. The other trend that I'm seeing, we do a lot of construction lending through our bank, and we're doing permanent lending through FHA is kind of our model. There's other ways to do it, but FHA requires Davis-Bacon construction wages to be used in the state of Indiana. And so the model for FHA new construction is kind of been put on hold until the wage comes back into favor. But we're doing a lot of new construction with Merchants Bank of Indiana, which is our parent company, and then taking it to the secondary mortgage market. The other thing that I'm seeing is REITs becoming a lot more active in the industry. They're coming out and either partnering with developers in the first place and agreeing to buy out the facility, sometimes just fully buy them out, or other times in exchange for an operating contract where the owner will come back and operate the facility for a fee. Those are some of the major trends, but I think that from a financing perspective, the market's certainly there for lenders to be interested.
And I'd say from an economic development standpoint, we see communities that are, I think, paying more attention in their comprehensive planning to the demands of their local community. So it's not uncommon today to see economic development strategic plans by many of the progressive communities in Indiana that specifically call out the need for recruiting or making senior housing communities an essential part of their economic development landscape. And I think that's largely just being being smart about their planning and responding to demand that's being driven largely by macro, or at least in part by macro demographic shifts. I mean, it's interesting to me that I've seen various comprehensive plans around the state that'll pick up on those demographic shifts, and I think it's accurate. We've read statistics recently, and I'm sure I'll get this wrong because there's experts here, but it'll give you an idea of the sense of the numbers. But we're essentially talking about the number of individuals in the United States who are over 65, effectively doubling by 2030 in that range. So you're talking about going from basically 1 out of 8 people in the United States to something more in the nature of 1 out of 5. I think as interesting, maybe more interesting in some respects, is the number of folks who are over 85 is going to triple by 2030 from where it is today. And so the demand really is there, and so I think communities are smart in responding to that as a way of maintaining the economic vibrancy of their communities.
You basically have 3 generations in retirement. And so, and the needs of the 65-year-old or the 68-year-old that wants to play a lot of golf and, does that, different than that of the 85-year-old. We have 40 home clients over the age of 100 in Central Indiana. So, I mean, you have quite a spectrum there and different needs. And that 85 plus, that's the population segment that looks at the need for the skilled care services and some of those kinds of things as a piece of that. For us, sort of the evergreen priorities for this population is transportation's an issue, affordable housing. The sticker shock for some of this is, baby boomers want what they want when they want it, but the price is going to affect some of that. So affordable housing is important, and there's some great things done locally. Give a shout out to Tom Fodor, who's here with Morning Light, because they've got a senior housing apartment, and some of the things that Whitsett Group and some of the others have done with some of the tax financing and things that Justice has done. There's some great examples in our community about ways to make these things affordable and available to this population, because again, assisted living on average is a $40,000 a year commitment, and a lot of people's retirement income won't support that.
We have a question, so we're going to take that one.
My name is Amanda Wild. I'm with Allmed Medical Supply. We actually deal with the business with Justice, and I was wondering, when does the conversation start about your ACOs and your NCOs and bundled payments and how that's going to affect the city?
Well, that's a great question. We celebrated our 100-year anniversary in 2010, and in 2011 we really took a hard look at exactly that area, and we really responded, I feel, ahead of some of the market with the implementation of some of our new programs. We instituted 2 new companies into our portfolio. We opened Freedom Senior Services, which is a companion care, non-medical care services for our residents and everyone in the Central Indiana area. We also opened a home health care agency and home hospice agency to better serve our clients. And we found that actually their outside clients have exceeded our internal clients at the Crestwood Communities. We have looked at partnerships with hospitals and other organizations, and it's going to be a huge impact on the future, and we feel that we're on the leading edge of that with the changes that we've made within our organization to accommodate it.
So some of the trends that we've touched on, and I'm going to go a little deeper into the trends, is and we'll come back to aging in place, is let's do the numbers. What's the average assisted living cost for 1 year today?
Genworth does a report on that every year. Indiana, it's about $41,000 a year for the average assisted living in Indiana, whereas the average skilled nursing care is about twice that. It's about $80,000 a year.
Okay, so it's 40 and 80, sizable numbers for a massive amount of population that's going to go from, in the next 15 years is going to double. So then what are the options other than, and we know only about 80% of the people ever place foot into what I'll call a community. Most people want to age in place. So what are the options to age in place? What are the options for assistance, and then what are the options on the zoning side? Because I've seen that, starting to see that trend change also.
Well, one of the things that you see, there's a real opportunity for what's called aging in place, for something called a CAP certification, a certified aging in place, a contractor who specializes in the modifications to a home to widen a doorway or modify a bathroom or a kitchen, some of those kind of things, which, that can be a one-time investment in the house as an alternative to another kind of setting. We've seen some creative things done here. One of the CDCs here has built a multi-unit, not really a multi-unit home, but sort of a shared housing model, building a house that's set up so that 4 roommates can share a home as roommates, as opposed to, as a single-family home, but purpose-built for that. And so there's a number of ways that people can target some of this, even an attempt with sort of a modern version of a boarding house that people have looked at doing. So there's a lot of creative approaches to addressing the desire of people to live in a particular part of town, stay in the area they're familiar with, around people they know, and ways to do that. And all of those kind of fit that definition of a community setting, just like assisted living does.
And then the zoning side?
Yeah, from a land use perspective, I think you see a full range of things, from kind of the small house movement, where you see the need for zoning approvals that relate to things that are very traditional to those of us in the real estate development world. Things like getting waivers from variances from minimum setbacks, variances from minimum square footage requirements, maybe variances for maximum lot coverages, things like that. And what they all relate to is the idea of building homes that are they're less traditional. They're not the McMansion type housing where the bedrooms are upstairs and there's a lot of climbing necessary in order to use various parts of the house, and so they're redesigned so that the living space is more on one level and it requires less travel around the house. And then the other thing, I think, picking up on the reference to a product that's like a boarding house type product. There's a lot of just education, I think, of local authorities about how these new housing products coming to the market require some explanation, because a lot of times those uses the current uses or current proposals don't fit within terminology that was created in the 1970s or 1980s, when a lot of early zoning ordinances were drafted. I mean, it's not uncommon to go into communities today and not find the term, for example, assisted living anywhere in the local zoning code. And so either communities have responded by amending their ordinances to kind of update them and bring them more current as far as terminology, or developers have sought variances or used other mechanisms for encompassing what their individual communities require, things like using planned unit development ordinances as a means of incorporating these different products into one setting that makes sense. And so, it's like a lot of things, just as we've used various terms to describe kind of the industry or the space where each of us operates, the communities are responding to that as well. But I do think, at least in central Indiana, I do think that they've been quick studies. I mean, I think the more nimble communities have done a good job of responding to the marketplace demands, and I don't think that's out of benevolence, but it's really just out of good economics for their individual communities. It makes sense from an economic development standpoint to be adaptive and respond to those changes.
And some things like, inclusion of sidewalks, the walkability of an area, the curb cuts, the economic benefit of the Monon Trail or the cultural trail or some of those kind of things is just examples of something you don't think of as an age-specific thing, but those are amenities that make those attractive for older adults, just like they're attractive to millennials. So I think that's a component of this that's there. I think that you see a trend in that way of trying to recreate some of that, if you're not in my lifetime, but before that, where the merchant lived over the store and you had sort of that, everything was sort of within a couple of blocks. And there's a lot of appeal to that. And in some cases, you see communities developing that where it never was, and another place trying to redevelop their central business district or their downtown core around that concept. And those can be very attractive for senior housing.
I would definitely agree with that. And, we've seen it when we were approached and working very closely with the New Pal community. You might not necessarily think of New Pal as a super progressive economic power, but they were right there with tax abatements to bring us in. So it is definitely a shift in the outlook. You still get a certain amount of the not in my backyard syndrome. There's still some confusion of senior housing versus apartments. We don't want apartments, but yet we do want a place for mom and dad to live with dignity and with independence. So we're seeing a shift to the good, certainly, but we still have a need for those of you who are helping us in the zoning and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen a lot of it too, going out to these communities and trying to educate people on what we're trying to do and how the market is changing, because I think people still have that stigma in their mind of, I don't want apartments, or I don't want a retirement home, or I don't want these things. When they start to grasp the concept of what it's trying to achieve, I think people are much more enlightened, and then it's just, hey, that makes perfect sense, let's do it. And that's what we've seen a lot of, is really just educating people. And then what we like to think is that design can set the standard as well, and not just be, hey, you drive by, that looks like a retirement facility, or hey, that looks like a typical apartment complex, starting to create a fabric in which you can build a community around, and it can be an economic driver for greater growth within that community.
So the trends are walkability, which is, everybody wants to have that, and as Americans are starting to understand that you don't have to get your car and drive every place. So both millennials want that, and so do seniors. Taking the existing housing stock, I mean, not every community is going to build a CCRC right next to its downtown. So much of the existing housing stock could be converted. I mean, if we keep with the numbers, a chairlift is about $3,000, and an elevator is about $20,000. 20 to 30, depending on this location. That sounds expensive, but that's a Camry. And for a lot of people, it's like, well, I could get rid of the car, or maybe not have two cars, sell one, and get an elevator, and I could live here for forever, maybe. Which you're starting to see some people thinking in that way as they design their new homes. It's like, well, I may need it, or I may want my parents or my relative to live here. I will put an elevator, or think about an elevator as part of my home design, or as part of the living quarters apartment over the garage, so that everybody in my family can live here for a longer period of time. So there's a zoning change and a trend that's really driving things forward, realizing that 90% of the people are not ever going to step foot into a community. So let me put the elephant on the table then. Why are we talking about this? Because, if Senate Bill 460 passes, it shuts this industry down. And I want to just try to address that as you individually, so that we can help us all understand that may or may not happen. So let's take that first. Does everybody know what House Bill 460 is? Okay.
Well, as in area agencies on aging have supported 460. It does not limit senior communities and senior housing. It's an effort to address the overbuild of the low occupancy of nursing facilities in the state. But it does not prevent the building of assisted living or the planned communities and these kinds of things. That's not the intent of it. And on a broader scale, when you think about the senior community, the thing I ask people is, I've got pictures of my kids. I didn't take many of them at the pediatrician's office. You don't live your life in the healthcare facility. And most of this is a conversation about where people live their life, not where they get their medical care. And so it's good to look at it from the perspective of what the consumer wants and how that works.
I think there are so many drivers behind the bill, and I think that it will have, it obviously is having a direct impact on the industry as a whole. Interesting situation. I had a contract signing with a vendor just about 3 weeks ago, and he came in and he said, "Well, I don't even know why I'm here. You guys you're getting shut down. You're not even going to be able to build this." And I said, "No, we're not. We're okay. You're okay. Let's just sign." But there is such a huge misperception that he really thought this contract was off the table because of the bill. And because this particular project we're working on is a CCRC, it had no effect on us. But again, the marketplace says, "Oh no, this is going to shut down the industry," and it certainly is not.
Yeah, from my perspective, a lot of the facilities we've been doing recently have been kind of a combination of skilled nursing and assisted living, and obviously this has a direct impact for the skilled nursing. So I think industry as a whole certainly is going to have an impact, and we always hate to see it go to the point of a moratorium where you have to say nothing can happen. We would always like to see something of more of a compromise, whether it be a certificate of need or some other mechanism by which you can show that there is a true need to justify the work, rather than saying, hey, you know what, we've got a large inventory of beds, we just need to kind of put a stop to it now. So at least from construction and design perspective, to say we can't build these type of facilities, you always hate to see it go to that. We always like to think that maybe there's a more compromise that can be taken, because we understand both sides of the spectrum, and it's not going to affect the industry as a whole, but certainly has a direct impact on that piece of the spectrum.
What about the financing side? Are people concerned on the financing side, or is it this is just a 3-year road bump? We've wasted about 50 minutes of your morning, so we're going to try to rectify that in the next 10, and you can ask us, you can ask the not me, but ask these people really great questions for, if you want to rectify anything you need for the next 10 minutes. Any questions?
One of the neat things is there's a group called the Pioneer Network that does a lot around building of community kind of settings for people for care. And there are some unique elements you can incorporate in design that are more aesthetically comfortable, or that sort of accommodate some of the challenges that come with dementia. In terms of not building facilities with long hallways, something that kind of curves around a circle, something that provides some visual cues and some other kind of things that can be helpful. And Pioneer Network is a great place to look if you look for something online, to kind of look up some of that. Small house movement, sort of a small setting where it's sort of a cottage or a more home-like environment. A lot of times kind of built around a common living space, kitchen space kind of things, and you're seeing some things done there. A lot of memory care is really about the amenities and the staffing. And the real driver of quality care is the staffing, not the facility. So the good programs, the good properties, the good services are ones that have quality staff, good staffing ratios, good tenure of their staff, and those are the ones that get the best scores in terms of the rating systems that are in place for those programs. But there's some great models out there of innovative things that have been done.
Yeah, what we've seen is a lot of focus on renovating existing facilities specifically for memory care, and just to achieve that for efficiency for staff, so they can be kind of that key piece to that and doing things a little bit differently within that memory care setting versus having, you know, a standard setting where you've got long corridors and other things that may be prohibitive to do those types of care settings.
We're doing some memory care design right now, and the cottage industry is absolutely, you need to people like to walk, and they'll walk in a circle, so you have to create that in the thing. The studies currently are saying daylight, lots of daylight is very important. Daily rhythms is what they're trying to bring back into care of residents that need special needs in the memory side. So seeing and smelling food being prepared and actually maybe participating in some of that, that's a daily rhythm that is being reintroduced. Being able to go outside in a secured environment is an important part of it. Staff visibility, meaning that the staff can see you but they can't see you. And the strange thing is how people come and go. You really, in really well-designed memory care facilities, you're not really sure where the door is, because in the interviews they've done with residents is that, you know, I can't go out that door. It's kind of so I don't want to see it every day. And I don't want to see the front parking lot. I don't want to see it coming and going. So you secure it as much as you can so that their daily rhythms get into routine and they don't necessarily see people coming and going and people coming and leaving the total facility. Tricky to do all that in a, you know, in a layout. And those are today's. I've studied this enough to know that about every 8 years there's some new idea that comes rolling around. So what's going to be in 10 years? I don't know.
One of the things that I think is absolutely critical, and you hit on it, is the staffing and the activities that are available for the residents. One of the trends that I have seen discussed quite a bit at the conventions and seminars that I've attended has been a lot of television-based activities, and there's a great place for that. There are some really neat options, really neat programs that are out there, but one of the fears that I have is one of the roundtable discussions I had multiple companies saying, oh, we have this computer-based program, we have this TV-based program, we have this and this and this. But what I feared immediately was I didn't send my daughter to a daycare to sit and watch TV all day. I certainly wouldn't send my parents to sit in front of a TV all day. That's, I think, going to be really critical that we watch the technology that develops and not become so dependent upon it that it becomes the TV babysitter that we were all worried about as new mothers, maybe, or new parents.
Any other questions?
The answer is it depends. Medicare does not cover housing expenses. Medicare covers health care costs. Some facilities, some assisted living facilities do accept Medicaid for housing. Medicaid is for low-income people. Medicare is for people age 65 and older, and you have this population that's dual eligible, that qualifies as low income and senior, and some of them that are in assisted living, Medicaid can pay for a portion of that. A lot of the housing options in Indiana are these tax incentive financing that offer some below market rate units, and some of that's done. But I think there's a real risk for a lot of sticker shock for a lot of us in terms of how much this kind of care costs. And because quality care is expensive, but currently it's a Genworth number, and MetLife has some good numbers out there too in terms of some planning for that. But it's 41 is the average here.
I could say from our perspective, the Crestwood Village portfolio is primarily an affordable community project. Affordable meaning low cost, not subsidized. Our assisted living on average is just under $2,000 a month, and that's a combination of rent and levels of care. That was as of last month. That was our average, but the average nationally is around 3,000 minimum, on average. So there's a range. Certainly, it can be as expensive as you want it to be, and those options are out there. But one of the things that's really, really changing in the industry, and it's wonderful on one hand, the increased competition, the economic conditions, the financial conditions are so good right now. There are so many new competitors in the market, which is excellent in many regards. It has increased choice, and it has forced some of the providers to improve over time, but it has also increased the opportunity to increase rents, and there are a lot of folks out there who are taking every advantage of that, and from an owner perspective, there's good reason for that. But it does competition drives price, and that's where we are right now. So I think you're absolutely on target in saying, if it's 40 now, it will be considerably higher in the future.
And for some people, rather than an assisted living, and this is true at some of the Justice properties, we have clients of Sequoia's who are on Medicaid that live in an apartment at Justice, and they have an attendant who maybe comes in and does some of that. So as you look at not an assisted living facility, but just a place where people live, where you might expect that some of those amenities that allow them to stay in place and maybe use some of these services from an attendant service of some sort, and that can be the best option for them as opposed to a registered assisted living facility. And all that's on that continuum of what's available.
It's 9 o'clock, so we'll take one more question if there is one. Yes.
The way the Medicaid rate is established, part of the formula includes the operating cost of the facility. And so when your occupancy rate is lower, the operating costs of the facility are spread over a lower number of units, and that's how it caused the cost to be higher for the state. It's the way the cost is determined. And so that number has, depending on which one you look at, 2.2 million to the state or 24 million to the state. That annual cost of that is based on what the cost is relative to that occupancy rate.
If there's no other questions, I'll turn it back to.
I just want to thank everybody for coming, and can we please give our panelists a big hand? Thank you, everyone. We appreciate it. And we hope to see everybody else next month. Next month is Evolution of Carmel on May 13th, so we hope to see you there. Thank you.
This video presentation was brought to you by Barnes & Thornburg, going the extra mile to help you with your complex legal needs. For more information on Barnes & Thornburg, please visit our website at www.btlaw.com. This video presentation was brought to you by Barnes & Thornburg, going the extra mile to help you with your complex legal needs. For more information on Barnes & Thornburg, visit our website at www.btlaw.com.